Welcome, everybody. If you're tuning in today, you have likely seen our primer on the 8 challenges we typically see clients encounter with public infrastructure asset management, or you tuned in for our first webinar where we tackled focusing on the current level of spending does not meet leadership's vision to maintain the optimal service level. Either way, welcome back. And we are excited you have joined us today for our second session of an 8-part series where we're going to be focused on overcoming planning and funding obstacles in the utility and transportation asset management space. If you're joining us and haven't seen the primer yet, it's available for download on our website under the news section. So if you go to www.WithersRavenel.com and navigate to the news section, you can find it there. Our topic for discussion today is incomplete or inaccurate data to tell the full story. And joining me to engage in our discussion today, I have Eddie Staley and Brandon Inscore from WithersRavenel. Welcome, guys. Thank you for joining me. So Brandon has been with Withers for several years now since he transitioned into consulting from municipal leadership. And currently, Brandon serves as our firm's Director of Asset Management. Prior to joining Withers, he served as a leader with the City of Greensboro in their GIS and asset management disciplines. Also with me today is a WithersRavenel veteran, Eddie Staley. He's been with the firm for many years and currently serves as the firm's Chief Innovation Officer. In this role, in his innovation role, Eddie spearheads a variety of initiatives aimed at accelerating and innovating technologies and services that we offer to our clients. So one of which happens to be asset management, which is why he's joined us today. So thank you guys both for tuning in and for helping me talk about this important topic. And Eddie, I really want to pick up where we left off from our last webinar, which is, which comes first, establishing a service level expectation or knowing more about the assets that you currently have in place. And I think where we left off from that webinar was really both.
Yeah, that's correct. Both are equally important, and both are going to be needed to build an effective model. But one of the things I want to caution people on is not just hyper focusing on we need more data, we need more data. I see that happen quite often. And really at the end of the day, more data doesn't always result in a more effective or accurate model. Again, the model is built upon all types of variables and assumptions that are out there. And again, level of service is one of those assumptions that can change over time. The other thing that can happen, again, is more data is going to come in over time as well. And the model is simply going to consume the latest data, and it's going to continue to take that data and optimize and build the perfect solution based on your decision tree. The other thing that I would say as well is we know things, like natural events may change our priorities. Grant dollars that may become available, like ARP funds or infrastructure funding, that could change our financial strategy. So the model is constantly changing. And again, that's the reason why I always tell people, don't get so caught up on, well, we don't have every field of data filled out, because at the end of the day, those are really not going to change the outcomes near as much as some of those other strategic decisions that you're going to make.
Thanks, Eddie. Great comments. So if people haven't gotten started and they don't really know where to start, Brandon, where would you suggest is a good launching point if a potential community hasn't started collecting data to support an asset management model already?
A good place to start is with a data audit, which will help you understand where gaps exist in your data. And so a data audit is just a comprehensive review to assess the impacts of how missing information may limit your decision-making ability for any given purpose. And while GIS is typically the foundation for the data, you can do something with tabular data. So don't get stuck if you don't have GIS data. However, it is important to note that a lack of GIS data can limit your ability to tell the story, because GIS often allows us to do some powerful visualizations. And once you've completed the audit and you know what you have and what you need, next you really want to focus on coming up with a strategy on how to fill in the gaps. So this includes prioritizing missing data that's most important for the given purpose. So generally, we advise clients to focus on your most critical assets first, and consider what the consequences of failure are for your critical assets. So for example, think about your community's critical infrastructure near hospitals or schools, key businesses, or maybe where infrastructure may go under a major road, because asset failure under major roads can impact your local economy and the life in your community. And think about what those impacts would be if those assets were to fail. And, what information do you need on those assets to help you drive sound investment decisions to ensure, that you're mitigating risk for your community? And next, we would just recommend simply looking at your oldest and largest assets. And once you start looking at what you have and what you need routinely, you're going to continue to add to it. It's going to evolve, and it's going to become evident where you need more data next as you add to your existing levels of service. And remember, it is all about mitigating risk and ensuring wise investments. Ask yourself what keeps you up at night and what would happen if these assets fail. And finally, I would say this, don't spend all the money your community has to invest in fixing things just to collect information, when in reality, it may not make the models more accurate. It's really a balance of collecting the right amount of data, and it's a happy place in the middle where we have enough data that gives you enough information to make reasonable assumptions.
That's great, Brandon. Thank you for that. So Eddie, once you know where you need to collect data, you know what information you want, what sources of information already exist to help build data or populate the model with data? The second part of that question is, what are some typical approaches for collecting additional data?
Yeah, great question. So many communities already have a very robust GIS inventory of the water, wastewater, stormwater, pavement, whatever it may be. If that doesn't exist in your community, again, the state of North Carolina has resources through data that was captured through the Rules Center many years ago. Again, sometimes the Council of Governments in your area may have data. Honestly, going back to even grabbing some of your paper plans and as-built drawings to fill in some of those gaps, those are reasonable places to start if that data really doesn't exist. I would also say some of the best knowledge you're going to get is walking around in people's heads. It's the people that have worked there for a long time. And as we know, as our workforce continues to age and go through retirement, it's really important to try to gather as much of that information as you can before that knowledge leaves your institution. The second thing I would say is, again, when you get into really understanding the overall condition of assets, it really kind of varies from the type of assets that you're dealing with. It could be things like smoke testing or CCTV of sanitary sewer lines, looking for inflow and infiltration, structural issues in the pipe. Same kind of thing, even on stormwater. On the pavement side, when we're dealing with things that are above ground, well, it's a lot easier to go out there and inspect pavement, looking for cracking, looking for those defects that are coming up. And when do they reach that moment of severity and extent that really it's calling for some type of preventative treatment to keep it from going further? And so that's really, when we look at modeling, there's a couple of things that we try to do with that modeling. It's not just when do we predict that it's going to fail, but it's also when is the right time to do some of these rehabilitations instead of letting it run to that point of failure. If I can catch it at the right time, then I can use a more cost-effective treatment to get the same results as a physical replacement at a fraction of the cost. And so really that's where the model really starts to really help focus in on that, not just always going to the crisis, but really starting to look at where am I going to get the greatest return on my investment? How am I going to optimize this needs list? And so really that's that's the number one thing that I like to see come out of a really good model is helping you not just understand what that long-term financial need is, but really operationally where you should be targeting those dollars. And even in many cases, where should you begin to CCTV, or where should you begin to go out and start to do inspections? Where are those most likely candidates that are out there, whether that's based on consequence or on age or some other factor?
Great stuff, Eddie, and good advice on ideas for where to find existing data so that you don't have to start from scratch. Okay, Brandon, I know we touched on it earlier, but talk to me about how GIS is used as a central hub to store the information and why it's important to have both the data and the mapping function. And second part of that question is, what kind of information can actually be stored within the GIS system?
So let's start with the easy question. And that's what kind of information can be stored in GIS. And really the beautiful thing about GIS is basically anything. Now, typically we see things like location, Latin long, direction, elevation, pictures, links to documents, other key features, comments, and perhaps even when maintenance was performed or maintenance dates. Now, age, size, material, and condition or ranking information are really the backbone for the model that Eddie was talking about. As for why it's important to have both asset characteristics and the mapping capabilities together, it's really critical because you can visualize pain points, and it helps you to tell the story to key stakeholders. So mapping tools provide a visual representation of the data that the data alone doesn't depict. So it's easier for the general audience to see where potential risks or failures can occur, and also where critical assets and intersect or overlap. So for example, when we see that there's failing buried assets and failing payment together, those visualizations can draw people's attention to logical conclusions instead of getting lost in the data and trying to process what it's trying to tell them.
Thanks, Brandon. So I think this is really helpful, and for me at least, in understanding how GIS and the modeling tools are used hand in hand. So Eddie, we're about done with our discussion today, but before we go, any final words of wisdom as we bring it to close?
Yeah, I'll go back where I started. Don't make this a data collection exercise. I know we're talking about data collection, but so many times we just see until all the data is absolutely perfect, we can't begin. And if you do that, you'll become paralyzed and you will never really get the benefits of the model. We'll just continue to try to drive data because data is changing every day. This is a living model. Every day we're going to learn something new. Somebody's going to go out in the field and find out something was maybe not quite the way we expected, that our digital twin, that our GIS was really not, 100% accurate. And it's never going to be. It's something that we're always going to be refining. So don't get caught up in that. Start the modeling process. The model is going to help you really start to understand how you make decisions, how you prioritize, how you optimize, and then that's going to help you even further define what data is really important in that decision tree. And so again, the two kind of play off of each other. At the end of the day, it's continually building on and refining the model to really help you make those decisions. And I'll give you a quick example. And Brandon, you were part of this project too as well, but there was a client that we worked with, and they needed to do this for their stormwater, and they really didn't have any data at all, really limited as-built, really nothing to go from. And initially, it's like, well, it's just too big. We can't go locate all this. It's going to be, just too big of a lift. And where we ended up at was really looking at some of the most older parts of the city, the areas where they were experiencing some of the greatest issues, started doing data collection there and building the life cycle model off of it, and starting to basically eat away at this data collection exercise over the next 3 to 4 years. The model was already built at the beginning, and they were already able to start making some decisions off of that model, even though they didn't have the entire system there. What you're going to see change over time as that new data comes in is maybe a reshuffling of the optimization of those projects. The needs are still going to be the same. Now it's just a matter of when does that need line up inside your CIP. So again, there's a lot of great ways to be able to do that. The other thing that I would say is using the model to help you understand where you should go do more condition assessment. Again, Brandon, you've been part of these too as well, where we're using age and material to kind of understand where the most likely failures are, but then we're going out and proofing that data based off of CCTV observation. And again, one of the great things that happens there is after doing this for a while, our confidence level based on age and material continues to go up, because what we anticipate, what our assumptions were, actually generally proves out to be true in the CCTV. And what that really means is we can continue to have more confidence in that model, spend less money doing the CCTV work, and more of those dollars are focused toward actually fixing that aged and failing infrastructure. Brandon, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that, but I mean, those are some examples that I think of very quickly.
Yeah, and I definitely think that those are great. Examples. Keys being start somewhere, and as we move through the information and as we develop and refine that information, it's going to continue to point us in the right direction. We're going to have a higher level of confidence as we move through. And again, we may reshuffle, like you said, or reprioritize some of the things that we thought from some of the initial models, but those needs are still there. It may just be that they're a little bit further down the list, and that we develop something that should be to be a little bit higher on the list.
Thanks, guys. Eddie, anything else?
No, Jessica, I really appreciate leading us through this discussion today. Hopefully this is information that people can take back and use inside their organization.
Yeah, I think you guys both had some really important points. I also, to kind of build on what Brandon was saying, I really like the point about don't spend all your money just building the data set, because that is going to just come over time, and the model is going to continue to evolve, but you don't need all of that up front to get started. So I think that was a key takeaway for me today, guys, and I really appreciate your time and your insights as usual. Extremely interesting and very helpful, both to me and obviously to our listeners. And so I will encourage everybody that's out there today to join us for our next session, where we're going to tackle our third challenge of modeling what if scenarios. If you missed the first session, or if you'd like to replay this session, these materials can be found on our website under the news section at www.withersravenel.com. You can also access them through our LinkedIn and our YouTube page. If you have any questions for Brandon or Eddie, feel free to shoot them over to us at info @withersravenel.com, and those come directly to part of our marketing team, and we'll get them over to the right person. So we look forward to seeing everybody next time, and thanks for tuning in today.